To Labor's Kristina Keneally, obviously climate change a big issue in this campaign, but I'm not sure that really convinces many people, that sort of behaviour.
Yeah, Kieran, look, good morning, first of all. Let me say that while I don't condone the practice of these particular protesters, I understand people's frustration. I mean, this coalition, Liberal National Government, has been in chaos over climate change, what to do about it. They've had 13 energy policies. We've had a Prime Minister brandishing coal in the Parliament. And now with the coalition of Clive Palmer, Pauline Hanson, Scott Morrison, if they were elected as a minority government, that chaos would only just continue. And right now, people are wanting action on climate change. They want a government that takes the issue seriously and takes real action. And, you know, while I, as I said, don't agree with these protesters' methods, I understand their frustration. It's one shared by the Australian people.
Can you confirm if your research is firming up, telling you that climate change is, you know, a vote changer, the #1 in the list of priorities for a number of voters?
You know, Laura, I have been up and down the eastern seaboard of Australia in our Fair Go Express, talking to people from Cairns right down through New South Wales and into Victoria. Everywhere I go, I am hearing from people a frustration that one of the biggest issues confronting the planet, one of the biggest issues confronting humanity, climate change, is something that, for whatever reason, this government cannot get their heads around, cannot come up with a solution. If they were serious about climate change, Malcolm Turnbull would still be Prime Minister. And what people are saying everywhere I go is that they want an action, they want a government that's going to deliver real action on climate change.
When you look at the impact electorally, do you see it as mixed though? Because obviously, you know, issues like Adani, climate change more broadly, are ones that resonate in seats like Warringah or, you know, the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, but not so much in central Queensland and North Queensland. Is that fair to say?
I think what's fair to say, Kieran, is that people are watching this economy and they see corporate profits having gone up 39%. They see wages only having gone up 5%. They see the cost of everything, energy, childcare, private health insurance, going up and up and up, and their wages staying flat. And people know, even Josh Frydenberg knows, that if you increase renewable energy, you lower power prices. People know that we have the sunniest and the windiest continent on Earth, and yet we are so far behind on taking action on climate change. People know because they're putting solar panels on their roof. Some 2 million Australians have already done it. That investing in renewable energy, taking real action on climate change is good for the planet, but it is also good for families, for jobs, for investment and for lower power prices.
A lot of independents are running a big climate change agenda, but they're also, you know, economically conservative. Zali Steggall, one that comes to mind. Do you think that independents at this stage, looking at where the polls are, should declare this side of an election so voters know where they would side in the event of minority government?
The first thing I would say, Laura, is that people should vote One Labor. Vote One Labor for real investment in schools and hospitals, vote One Labor for real movement on wages going up, and vote One Labor for real action on climate change. And to those people who are concerned about the economy, and they rightfully should be, because all the economic signs under this Liberal National Government are going in the wrong direction, what I would say is look at Labor's costings that we have put out there.
But what about the independents? Should they be declaring either way before an election, so voters aren't surprised?
Well, it's up to independents what they say. What I say to voters is this: look at our costings, what we have demonstrated through our costings done by the Parliamentary Budget Office, is that we will achieve $154 billion in savings, $87 billion of that going to pay down debt, and surpluses that are 40% bigger than this government, returning the budget to surplus in the same year that the government projects that it will do so. And that's because we have taken the clear decisions to make the tough choices to crack down on tax loopholes for the top end of town and invest into schools and hospitals. What I say to the independents, what I say to the people of Australia is ask the government this: They have put out $6 billion of new spend since the PFO came out, since the budget came out, and yet they have failed to show us how they're going to pay for that. Where are the government's costings? Where are the government's costings? What schools, hospitals, and services to pensioners are they going to cut to pay for that $6 billion splash out?
One of the new spends was announced at the weekend, apparently taking some cabinet ministers by surprise when Mr Morrison announced that first home buyers guarantee for deposits. Labor's backed it. Given the lack of modelling, the lack of scrutiny of it, are you maybe having second thoughts?
Yeah, Kieran, this package announced by the Prime Minister is a 5 minutes to midnight discovery that there is a problem with housing affordability for first home buyers. They've been in government for 6 years and done nothing. Although we do know, and they've never denied it, that Scott Morrison tried to take negative gearing reform through the cabinet, and he's never denied that. What he's done here at 5 minutes to midnight is a modest and restricted measure. It is a modest measure. It's a scheme that operates in WA and New Zealand. It is restricted to 10,000 people. We think, it could help with some people, but it needs to be part of a bigger suite of policy changes, and that's what Labor's taking to this election. Our build-to-rent scheme, our changes to negative gearing, our 250,000 affordable home build that we're going to deliver. It's what the government announced on the weekend, modest and restricted, and we're comfortable with it.
Taxpayers will essentially be burdening a $500 million risk through this policy. So will you seek modelling on the impact on the housing market and the risk to the taxpayer before you go ahead with this?
Well, we will consult with the sector, as you would expect a responsible government to do.
Is this an announcement that you've agreed to pending some modelling, pending some research, or is it
let me make the point, Laura, that this is a scheme that operates in WA, operates in New Zealand. Given the very modest and restricted nature of what the government's announced, we don't think it will have any significant impact on housing prices, and we are comfortable to proceed with it, given that it's modest and restricted, and given that the lived experience of it in WA and in New Zealand would suggest that, in fact, the default rate is lower than it is for housing borrowers more broadly. But this is a very modest and restricted announcement that Scott Morrison is pinging his entire pitch to the community on, and it does not do enough to address the problem that first home buyers face, which is that they go to auctions knowing that investors buying their 6th or 7th investment property have a big fat taxpayer-funded subsidy in their back pocket when they go to this. This is levelling the playing field, our changes to negative gearing for first home buyers.
The government says there were 110,000 first home buyers last year, and that's the best result in 9 years. Doesn't it show that you say that they're ignoring it, but doesn't that record suggest otherwise? Well,
first of all, Kieran, there's 110,000 first home buyers and their package only helps 10,000 people, I think that puts into context what I've been saying, that it is a modest and restricted measure.
So will you expand it?
Pardon me?
Will you expand it?
Laura, we have accepted the 10,000 number that the government have committed to, and of course we will work with the sector in government should we be elected on the 18th of May.
So you don't rule out perhaps expanding it to more than
Laura, this is policy on the run by the Prime Minister.
You've agreed to it, Senator. You've agreed to this policy on the run. You're saying you'll talk to the industry.
On the implementation, absolutely. We will talk on the implementation.
Leaving open the option to expand it perhaps
because we go
higher than the means test level that has been put in.
No, Laura, we go to this election with a clear and full suite of policies that have been in front of the Australian people now for several years. The government, 5 minutes to midnight, discovered they had a polling problem with first home buyers, and the Prime Minister, without taking it through his cabinet, threw a policy out there that is modest and restricted. Can I say, Kieran, back to your question, The government likes to run scare campaigns, don't they? They've been running a scare campaign that Labor's changes to negative gearing are going to affect housing prices. But apparently if housing prices go down under Josh Frydenberg and Matthias Cormann and Scott Morrison, that's okay. But if Labor introduces measures that are going to give an even playing field to first home buyers, suddenly, run around with your hands up in the air and screaming the sky is about to fall in. And can I say, we're seeing more and more scare campaigns in this election. I cannot remember a more nasty, baseless, fear-driven campaign from a government than what we are seeing here.
Are you scared? Last election?
Well, can I just say this? We wake up this morning to news that there are racist, unauthorized flyers circulating in Anne Ali's seat in the West. The Liberals, I would like to think, have nothing to do with this. They can confirm this later today. We see in Queensland, in the seat of Dixon, Peter Dutton, who started out by criticising his opponent for her disability, is now circulating scare campaign material that warns people that they're getting a final notice on their rent. I mean, this is fear, desperation from a Prime Minister and a Liberal government that has nothing to say, no hope, no vision and no change for Australia.
I'm sure Mr Morrison will condemn any racism within that sort of...
He should today.
Will be condemned across the board in terms of that approach to our politics. There's no place for it. I'm sure he will. But you're by the same token, you're having a crack at one individual today. I see in Philip Curry's story in the Financial Review, Andrew Bragg, number 2 on the New South Wales Senate ticket because of his business background. But, the fact that he comes from the BCA, does that really, does it say much given... I mean, we know that the Liberal Party's links to the business community simply makes sense, wouldn't it?
Well, we do know the Liberal Party's links to the business community. Andrew Bragg, former director of the Liberal Party, then went to the Business Council of Australia, ran their AstroTurf campaign for the corporate tax cut on behalf of the Liberal government. That was an abysmal failure. So the BCA have now got Andrew Bragg running number 2, most likely will be elected as a Liberal senator. Let me just make this point.
Number 1 in the Senate ticket in New South Wales happens to be a former union leader, doesn't he?
Let me make this point.
Is that correct?
Let me make this point.
Is that right, Kristina?
Yes, it is. And you know what, Laura? I will take union people who have fought for wages, for working folks, fought for working people to have a wage rise over a failed ad executive and a business lobbyist who has pushed and pushed and pushed for an $80 billion corporate tax cuts for the big companies and the big banks. Because let's make this point. The BCA have put out their wish list, a to-do list. It is literally titled to-do list for the next government. Number 1 on that, a corporate tax cut to get the Scott Morrison promised 250 times, voted for 10 times, corporate tax cut back into legislation. And who are they going to have sitting there in the Senate but their man, Andrew Bragg, to agitate for it? And you know that if a Morrison, Palmer, Hanson government gets elected, Clive Palmer, he wants that corporate tax cut. Pauline Hanson votes 90% of the time with the coalition. That's what they will be bringing back, that $80 billion tax cut for the big companies and the big banks.
Morrison, Palmer, Hanson, maybe throw Katter. It could be a few other names in the mix. Kristina Keneally, thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.